It is really exciting to see this many people come out on a rather chilly Thursday evening, and we are thrilled that you are here with us. Very, very exciting to be here for our second visioning session, where we have brought in a couple of outstanding business consultants from the area to help the board and the long-range planning committee with taking our planning to the next level. And that's what this is really all about. And we thought we were doing a pretty good job with our long-range planning and going out and asking the community question through surveys and compiling that information and massaging it and then giving feedback to the community. And as we got Neil and Christine in and they started going through and analyzing all the information, what they came back and noticed is you really do know a lot about your community. We know what brought a lot of you here, and we know what keeps you here, and we know what your priorities are. But we wanted to take it to the next level, like I said, and we wanted to take a look at what our future could look like. We know we love the community that we have now. It's a warm and caring community, and we have a lot of fun here. Great neighbors, great camaraderie, but we really think that there is more out there for us. And over the past year or so, we've had a lot of members coming to us asking questions about more pickleball courts, for example, because that has just exploded in Chickasaw Point that we have so many people playing. So one of the things that we needed to decide was, sure, we're willing to put some money into a great amenity like that and expand it, but where do we put it? And we want to make sure that when we do that and we make that kind of investment, that we're looking at the big picture and that we put it in the right place. So that kind of brought us to this point where we said, well, you know, let's just get a master plan and look at the whole thing. Another thing that's really driving us to do this is it's critical for Chickasaw Point to continue to grow. We need to bring more people in here that are going to build homes and really be involved and be part of our community. We need to do that in order to be sustainable and to bring in the additional revenues that we're going to need over the next several years. Many of you have heard us say that this community is 40+ years old, so there's just a lot of things a lot of money that we need to put into the community to maintain it, and we need those extra people to get that in here. And we do know that we have a wonderful community, but how many of you have sold homes, at least one home, since you've been an adult? Can I see a show of hands? Most everybody in here, right? And I'll bet when you did that, that most of you went out and sought the assistance of a professional realtor to come in and do that. And what they do then is they come in and they evaluate your home that you already love, that you put a lot of effort into, and they tell you what you're going to need to do to it to make it even more competitive and more attractive to those people that don't have the emotional bond to it. So that's also what Neil and Christine are doing for us, is they're taking that objective view and they're telling us what we need to do to go out there and be competitive in Oconee County and with North Georgia to bring the people in here to live in Chickasaw Point. So one of the things that they're going to share with you is what they see when they come in, and they're also going to share some information that a previous consultant that the board worked with on our golf course study told us when he came in and evaluated our golf course, and to a certain extent the community that surrounded that golf course. So they're going to share all that information with you. They're going to share some concepts with you for you to think about, and then we'll get some feedback from you on what you like and what sounds good to you tonight. And then at some point following this, we'll get back together, the board, the Long Range Planning Committee, Christine and Neil, and we'll talk about what our next steps are going to be. And with that, I'll not take up any more of their precious time, and I'll turn it over to them, and I'll let them do their own introduction about who they are and what their background is. So again, thank you for being here. We really do appreciate it.
Hi, everybody. I want to thank you all for coming. I know it's happy hour and you don't have a glass of wine in your hand. So I apologize for that, but I'm glad you're here. A little bit about myself, I'm an architect, registered in 3 states. I went to Clemson, so go Tigers. And I've been practicing for over, 30 years. And I've done mostly commercial work, worked in Greenville and Charleston and Columbia. And I've had my own office now for about 17 years. And I have a staff of 3 people, not including myself. Anyway, Neil and I do a lot of visioning. We enjoy this, and we want to think about tonight, what are the possibilities? We're going to talk a lot about the possibilities and try to look forward. With that, I'll turn it over to Neil.
Thanks, Christine. My name's Neil Workman. I'm with Trail Corporation. We're a design build firm located in Clemson and offices in Greenville. And can you hear?
Raise it up.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. In any case, I've been doing this for about 40 years, and doing design build, it means every time you get ready to build a building, you meet with the client, you let the client tell you their story about where they are, where they want to go, and how they want to get there. And so we're always working with designers and owners to figure out how do we solve their problem with physical space and with types of buildings and what statements that they may want to make. So, as I said, Christine and I have been doing this a long time, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the purpose of the meeting tonight is that we're not here to tell you what you need to do. We're going to talk about an overview of some previous reports that you've had done. We're then going to stimulate your thoughts about the possibilities of how you may take advantage of what your reports have said. We're not going to make any concrete decisions tonight. This is still information gathering that will be given to the board and to the long-range planning committee. And then from that will hopefully be, if that's what the board decides to do, a plan that takes place. Now, there's some yellow cards on the tables up here. And those yellow cards are so if you have a question with this many people in this many areas, if you have a question, feel free to interrupt, but just raise the yellow card and wave it so I can identify where you are. And of course, I can see you people here very well. This is the tough part. Since we did one of these on a Saturday, we've already had the benefit of knowing where the ice pick was put in our head after we made those presentations. So I'm going to take advantage a little bit of sharing with you. Evidently, everybody did not listen well, or either I did not articulate it very clearly. You have a long-range plan that was done in 2013, of which many of you probably participated in. If you did, raise your hand. Did you fill it out? Okay. Have you read it, the results of it? How many read the results? Not near as many that filled it out. Next thing, you had a golf course study done at Clemson University in 2012. How many of you have read that? Okay, everything I'm fixing to say from here on out is not something that Christine and I are saying. What we're doing is that we've read the information, and what we want to share with you are our thoughts about what we see. How many of you had children? How many of you could suggest to your child what you think he ought to do, and then he would just, or she would just go do it? Well, we kind of got the same situation here. People that have lived here a long time, and it's been just like you've always wanted it, you may be in a very uncomfortable position, but what I don't want you to go back and say, those people don't like our community. They have bad things to say about it. That's not what we're talking about at all. What we're talking about is this is a reality check. It's a time to stop in time and say, what do we have and what happens? And I'm going to go through and just highlight what came from the Chickasaw Long Range Planning report. And I would encourage you to go read it in depth because it has a ton of information. When we were first asked to look at coming on board and look at doing a visioning session, after we got copies of the bylaws, the covenants, the golf course study, and everything else, we said, you don't need another study. You need to decide what you're going to do with the information that's already been studied. So we're not here to restudy you. What we're here to do is to help you decide who you want to be. Some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, we're not trying to suggest that you need to be a Cliffs community or that you need to be a Kiwi Key. You need to be whoever you need to be. but you need to make that decision. Some things I want to really give you a wake-up call on is if you've got approximately 400 people living here and you don't move any more people in, and you got buildings that are 40 years old that'll be 50 to 60 years old later, they're going to continue to decline and not be able to meet your needs. So how do you pay for replacing them? How do you pay for your golf course? You got two choices, or three. You can continue to cut services, you can bring more people in to contribute to the number of people that are contributing, or else you've got to raise your dues. Those are the only three choices out of the trap. So you're going to make some decisions about what you decide to do about that. So one of the things I wanted to talk about in just going through here highlighting, and I'm going to do, some of this is going to be read, but what I really want you to concentrate on, because you're going to come back at the end of the night and we're going to give you a work table. That's what the sheets on these tables for, and some of you will need to go up to the tables. We're going to ask you to tell us what you think you want to do with Chickasaw Point in many different areas. All of them come from your long-range planning. It's not that we've invented any new categories. So it's real important that you just kind of listen to the things we're talking about that have been said, so that when it comes time for you to react, you're doing it with knowledge of what has already been determined by you. When the long-range planning committee had to fill out the surveys, these are your thoughts, not ours. But all we're trying to do is help you understand how you could maybe look at solving some of those things. There are 418 single-family homes. You own your own water and waste treatment plant. And somebody may say, well, we just don't have to keep paying that. Well, guess what? When you quit paying for water and sewage in a place that you own, guess what? It doesn't work anymore. So it's crazy not to think you're going to have to upgrade your sewer plant at times, and are you going to do it out of your own pocket through increasing assessments, or are you going to try to have more people move in? And we'll talk about that in a little more detail. You purchased a golf course and improved its condition primarily through volunteers, not through raising dues, but primarily through volunteers. How long do you think you can maintain and make a golf course better when all you have that can work on it is volunteers? Sooner or later you have to spend money, and the volunteers can't do certain parts of the work. What you said in this report, in the next 10 years, growth and renewal are very important. Strong support of operations. Golf is important to the community and its success. Keep the gate and the attendant. We are open to patrols in the community by Oconee County Sheriff's Department. Continue to support the amenities. Continue to maintain land at entrance of community. Property owners expressed an interest in building smaller homes. Currently your requirement is 1,400 square feet per single family home. What that means is if you want to do something different, you got to all come together and say, we need to change something. So if that's what you want to do. Keep in mind, everything I'm reading to you is not something I'm suggesting to you or that I'm thinking that is a good idea that I want to share with you. These are what you said to yourselves in 2013. Community in general is happy living in Chickasaw Point and would recommend it to others. They believe that the golf course improvements have impacted property values, and they are open to new amenities that would attract more active members. Some of the barriers that you have indicated. Relying on volunteers has led to deferred maintenance and volunteer burnout. Annual base assessments were set in 1992 and were not to increase more than the cost of living, but does not reflect the cost of maintaining an aging infrastructure, roads, and amenities. Residents recognize the need for assessments. And we, of course, now know that the Pro Shop and Grill is called the Clubhouse, and the Clubhouse is now called the Community Center. Roadmap to financial sustainability, I won't read all of the different things in it, but the essence of it is that all of the costs for the maintenance of Chickasaw Point has to be borne by everyone across the board. This is what y'all said. You also need to know that if you have more than 200 more people move into this community, you will have exceeded the supply of your water capacity that you currently own, which would mean building a new water tank, which would cost between $300,000 and $500,000. But the key is, if you can't figure out how to get 200 people to move here with the present capacity, it would be foolhardy to build a new water plant that would allow you to bring another 200 in when you hadn't even got the first 200 in here yet. So think about it sequentially. What do we got to do that? Create an annual budget for amenity operations, capital campaign fund, community center for a clubhouse, pro shop, larger restaurant, grill restaurant, event center, administrative offices. And you're going to see some stuff later where we're going to talk to you about what you could do, about consolidating things, about putting things in different places. Some of the things that we're talking about, we're not saying you need to do it, we're saying you need to think about whether that would be better or not. I will tell you this, and this is the kind of thing we'll be sharing more with the board than everybody else needing to know. But if you came in and you wanted to do a renovation of this building, let's just say you wanted to get rid of the step down because it created issues and you wanted to frame a floor system in here so that it would be a flat floor, and you had a few other things you needed to upgrade. If we do more than a certain percentage of modifications to this building, it causes the building to have to be brought up to current code. That means a sprinkler system and all kinds of stuff. So all we're getting at when we talk about that is that there'll be a point where you have to evaluate renovating and fixing up what you have versus what it would cost to build a new facility. If you built a new facility, should it go right back where it was, or is there another idea? We don't have the answers to that. It's up to you to decide what you think needs to happen. And then it's our job to show you different ways that you can make that happen. One of the things is our supporting recommendations is to create a market committee with experience on the POA board to include the golf course team and strategize. Develop a tie-in to Sanctuary Point, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Work on updating signage with James Jarvis on Highway 11 at the fire station on South Hogan. And one of the things it starts talking about, when you start talking about creating a marketing committee, the first thing you've got to do before you create a marketing committee, and this is something that we will be doing, we'll be meeting with outside real estate people and with people from Oconee County to find out, what do people think about Chickasaw Point? What's the buzz when people come look? What does people say when they bring people in, and how are the real estate people treating it? Because how can you go about putting together a committee that wants to expand selling your lots or homes here when you don't know what the issues are? Very much just like you said, you've got to understand the issues in order to be able to solve them. And we're not saying there are any issues, we're just saying if you want to sell stuff, you got to figure out what it takes to make it sell. And one of the things that is different is that when you drive in there, I've lived in Oconee County for over 40 years, and I remember when all this was built. And I had not been back here for, I can't tell you, maybe 25 or 30 years. And it has changed a lot, and one of the things that you don't realize is that when you live here, your entrance, which at one point was beautiful and had smaller, more ornamental trees, are now huge, and it's big, and it's grown, and it's shut itself down. But you won't notice that when you live here. As a contractor, I have people on job sites that throw trash wrappers, food wrappers, and pop bottles everywhere. My guys don't see it because they're driving up every day to get out and look at what they got to do on the building to finish it and do everything they got to do. But it takes an owner drives up and they say, what kind of a mess is this? He sees the mess because he doesn't know what you got to do to build the building. So a lot of times it takes a fresh eye to come in and say, there are a lot of simple things you could do that can make improvements, and then there's some things you could do that can make drastic improvements. You've got to decide how far you want to push that wagon. And we'll be giving you options and things you can think about. You have 110 buildable lots left. Now when it says 110 buildable lots left, and most of them are on the golf course, as you all know, you have some lots that can't be built on, and you've got some lots that it costs a fortune to build on. And they're going to give you some things to think about related to that a little bit later. Maintain and upgrade existing amenities for all property owners. As I mentioned earlier, your sewer capacity and your water capacity, and initiatives to encourage new construction. These are things that y'all said would be initiatives you could consider. Remove the size requirements for new homes and market them. Other options include new housing options like townhouses and villas. Review the Architectural Compliance Committee guidelines. Evaluate existing building requirements. Now you know why we didn't need to study you. Y'all did a thorough job of looking at yourself, and you did a thorough job of saying what you think you need to do in every one of the categories. And what we're going to be working with you on is a portion of this is about how to do that and what types of things you need to be thinking about as you work through that. Now there's several other things, and I'm going to encourage you to go back and read this, but both existing buildings, the older, meaning the community center and the clubhouse, these buildings need to be studied and determined if they need to be renovated or rebuilt. Entrances and roadsides. The entrance is very important. Reinstate the Community Beautification Committee. Message board at the gate is obsolete. Road signs are blocked by overgrown trees and need to be removed, maybe by volunteers. Then it says golf course signage on Highway 11 at the entrance to the golf course. The marketing committee working with James Jarvis on a new sign for Highway 11 for the golf course. And what it needs is more than just a new sign, and we'll talk to you about some things about that in a moment also. Uncovered dry dock area. This area is not maintained by residents. Rental fees need to be raised to cover hired maintenance. And we're going to talk to you about some opportunities that you may have there also. So that's an overview of the Long Range Planning Committee. It has a lot more detail in it, and I would encourage you to read it. When you heard all the things I had to say, how'd you feel? Overwhelmed? Okay.
Committee, I realized.
Pardon?
When my wife was on that committee, I knew what was going on.
Well, all I'm getting at, yes ma'am.
I have a question. So there was a couple things I expected to hear that I didn't, and we just moved here, so I haven't read a lot of these things, but was there anything that came out of your first visioning session that was really significant to a lot of people that has not been in the previous reports?
The first visioning session, the one that we had on Saturday,
Yes.
if you would, it's the same meeting we're having tonight.
Right.
It was for people that were primarily that did not live here full time.
But my question is, did anything come up, was anything raised that was important to the community that has not currently been addressed by the studies you've looked at?
Yes, there was one thing, and I can't, it's not the pickleball court.
Was
There
it
one thing.
telecommunications, infrastructure?
Bocce ball was the one, but there was one other thing, but it wasn't major. It was something insignificant.
So there was nothing about communications infrastructure, internet services?
Broadband, I mean, but
Right.
we'll be talking about that. But
Okay.
broadband needed to be put in. That's what I was. There was one item to do from
Okay, thank you.
broadband.
Taylor.
You said a certain number of lots were unbuildable. What makes a lot unbuildable?
Well, I can't answer that because I didn't do this survey. But if I had to guess, some of them are size. Let's see. And the others,
May I address that?
you maybe address that.
Everybody knows that we have circling the earth now, a space station. There's nothing that's unbuildable. There is lots that's undesirable to build on because it's all cost associated with it. But when people tell me that there's lots in here that's unbuildable, I say, it's buildable if you want to fit.
You are correct. You're correct on that. They're not economically feasible, and you would not have a competitive home cost if you built on many of the lots that are here. However, I have been told that based on your current zoning, there are some lots that are too small to actually build on. And I can't tell you how that happened, but anyway. Yes.
You said there were 10 buildable lots, but that our sewer and water infrastructure could handle 200 more houses.
The sewer can handle more than that. The water can handle up to 200 more houses
Okay,
without having to build a new water tank.
but we don't have another 200 houses to build then, do we?
We're going to give you some alternatives to that. Because the low-hanging fruit is how do you get 200 people to move in here, because that takes the onus off of having to raise the dues. So if you got to ask yourself, if I was going to move to Chickasaw Point, what would I want to see if I were a 40-year-old or a 60-year-old and I was wanting to make a move in here? What would I need to feel here? Now we know that everybody here and everybody that moves here is gets to know each other and you're warm, friendly, and open and caring about each other. We know all that. But the key is, how does the person that's coming in for the first time do that? That's why we want to talk to the outside real estate people and find out what are the comments, what's being said, and what is the overall view from the real estate people about Chickasaw Point, so that we can then come back and say, this is feedback that we heard, and we talked to this many different people, and this is an issue you just need to be aware of. Now, yes, sir.
You mentioned in the study the size of the homes.
Yes.
I believe in 2013 it was 1,700 square feet.
It's been reduced to 1,400.
Reduced to 14. But when that study was done, it was 1,700.
Right. And you may find that it needs to be smaller than that. Be careful, be careful. Be careful what you say, you may fall in love with it. And also you'll realize that if you've got a house over here that's 3,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet based on the water or whatever it is, and you build six houses over here that are 900 to 1,200 square feet, they do not in any way, shape, or form affect each other's value. It's two different products entirely. Anyway, well, what's going on around Chickasaw Point? How many of you heard the word Charlanta? Charlanta. We're almost dead in between Charlotte and Atlanta. We're the third most economically viable microeconomy in the nation. There's more growth happening here than anywhere else. And the more people that live in Anderson, Pickens, and Oconee, we have a lot of second-tier manufacturers, some first-tier manufacturers that come into the area. It's a great place to move a business, grow a business, and have a great workforce. And that mainly comes from our tech schools who do such a good job. Additionally, how many have heard of Sanctuary Point?
For years.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping it won't be a lot more years, but you have to just know what's going on. And how many know about the 2 industrial parks that Oconee County's put on Highway 11? Industrial parks create opportunities for people to live closer to work or live in a new location, or people to move here. So there are opportunities that have to be associated with that, and what we're going to be talking to when we talk to Mr. Blackwell with Economic Development is what are his thoughts about how Chickasaw Point can be a contributor to what happens with the economic development work that they see. Now, I also know that you've talked and heard that they had planned a golf course for Sanctuary Point. They've now determined that golf courses don't work financially, and there could be some opportunity that maybe y'all would be able to maybe allow golf to be played with them. That may be a salvation of your golf course and a way to improve it. So that's the only reason we bring up what's going on around you, so that you can be keyed into that as things are opening up and happening, and look for those opportunities to maybe do something with it. And Sanctuary Point will be a game changer if it happens.
Where's that gonna be?
It's at the end, exit 1, Highway 11.
That's what I thought.
Take 11 until it dead ends.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
And if it doesn't happen there, there's a high probability that the Go Center may go somewhere else, but it'll still be bordering Oconee County. If that project can't get off the ground, there are other alternatives being explored in there. Chris?
Yes.
I can't multitask.
We tag team, and I've asked Neil to stay at least in the chapter that we're supposed to be in, but obviously he's jumped ahead. After the long-range planning committee or report, the next thing we wanted to talk about is the golf report done by Clemson University in 2012. Notice this cover, okay? I did not write this. We're gonna talk about a lot of things tonight, but we're gonna take you down to the rock bottom. This report I'm gonna read is rock bottom, but just bear with me. Remember, I didn't write it, and we're gonna pull you back up, okay? There are gonna be a lot of possibilities here. If you have not read this, I suggest you read it. You can get a copy from Lisa.
It's online as well.
Okay. I'm going to read just the highlights, all right? The conclusion of the golf course study is it's on a death spiral. The problem is it costs almost $1 million to maintain an 18-hole golf course, and you don't have enough population in here living here. So a very simple solution is to get more people to move in. We're going to talk about that later as well. The conclusion of this survey is that unless the capital investment is made, the golf course will succumb to the death spiral with losses continuing. An investment, if made, combined with an emphasis on leveraging technology to engage in customer relationship management, can have a positive effect and mitigate the likely continuing operational losses. Stated on page 20 is that the community needs to revise itself along with the golf course. One cannot be done without the other. Financial sustainability of the golf course is dependent on the success of the community. So they go hand in hand. Also on page 20, any efforts that focus on operational issues before the longer-term vision for the community is crafted and executed are wasteful. Okay, this was all done in 2012. That's the cover, so don't kill the messenger. 42-year-old history of Chickasaw, litigation, failed homeowner assessments, bankruptcies, amenities being shut down, insufficient financial resources, image of the golf course by regional golfers is one of an inferior course layout. All of this, which is a good point, all of this has actually created a very strong community of volunteers. That's the plus side. In this report, it was investigated also selling the golf course and just turning it into green open space, but that also requires $150,000 a year to maintain it. It's a lot less, but again, that's your decision. So if you have not read this report, please do so. It's quite, it is disturbing. I was disturbed when I read it. So that's the rock bottom point of the presentation. From there, we're going to move forward. The rankings of the top 10 items of importance from the community residents and property owners. And this is from the long-range plan that Neil talked about. Combined, the important things are the entrance, the pool, golf, clubhouse, roadside appearance, boat ramps, the beach, tennis, the grill, and the beach pavilion. There was a little bit of shifting between residents, full-time residents, and property owners, but not a whole lot. Items not important were the covered dry dock and the uncovered dry dock, hiking bike trails, health fitness, sports bar, Papoose Park, a library, community garden, and crafts. Now, we found from the group that we met with 2 Saturdays ago that some of these things that were found to not be important actually were. So be thinking about those, and we're going to rank them later on.
You know, when you build a community, and y'all have all heard this, you can either plan for it or you can just let it happen. When you plan for something to happen, you usually get something closer to what you'd like to have. When you just let it happen, you usually lose everything valuable to you when that happens. And so what we're going to be asking you to do tonight at some point is to think about, what do you want this community to be? Do you want to just sit here and say, well, I'm not going to pay any more dues, I'm not going to do this, we're not going to move anything, we're not going to change anything? It's going to continue to go downhill and go downhill and go downhill, and you're going to get whatever that result is, and you'll have no influence or no ability to determine what your future looks like. Or you can say, we're going to start eating this elephant one bite at a time, and these are the first bites we're going to take, and these are the things we're going to do to start improving our community, and start changing our image, and start building it up again. And so those are the things that you'll have to be thinking about, and that we'll be working through with you tonight to give you some thoughts and ideas. When you build community, it takes all of you. You've got to have the people that don't want to do anything talking to the people that want to do everything. You gotta have, people that say, I'm not putting any money in it, and people say, I'm willing to put more money in it. You've gotta have them talking to each other, because there's middle ground. You know, community is always middle ground. It can't be everything that two people want, and it can't be everything that four people want. It has to be through some type of compromise that you determine that. And all communities have all kinds of people in it, and they have all kinds of things that occur in that community. And some people would say, I just can't bear to think that this would be torn down and moved to the front. And another person said, well, I think that'd be great to do that. How do you solve that problem? That's what you're going to be faced with as you move forward. And so what I want you to do is to get out your attitude adjustment pill, take it, see how well it works. I got my doubts. Wouldn't work in my house. But anyway, if you're talking about planning, had you rather ride down a road that looked like that or one that looked like that? What's interesting is they could have had this road look a lot like the other one had they planned for it and decided that they wanted it to look more like that, more like that. They could have moved signage and everything. Whoa. Multitasking, you know.
Happy finger troll.
They could have come in here and had a setback that would require any signage that happens back here, and it can't be more than a certain height. There are all kinds of little things that could have happened like that coming into a town where it's quiet, but it tells you where you are and what you're looking at. Now here's a typical service station with no design standards. They just get to build what they build everywhere. And here's the same type of station where somebody said, nope, we don't want it to look like that. We want it to fit the character of our community. You have the ability to control anything that you want to control. You have the ability to make anything look like you want to make it look. It takes will, and it takes vision, and it takes constant compromise of turning and talking to each other and getting each other to say, well, there we go again. I'd rather that be a metal roof than a shingle roof like that. Okay, if that's your only problem, we'll figure out how to put a metal roof on it. I'm just saying that there's always a way that you can find middle ground to move forward as you go through this.
All right, one question we want to ask is, what is it that makes communities successful and that attract people to a community? Beauty is the first answer, and obviously this part of our state is very, very beautiful. A lot of farmland, a lot of lakes, a lot of green rolling pastures. Also a sense of place and uniqueness, and by uniqueness I mean natural characteristics. So what creates success in these communities? How welcoming is the community to its newcomers? Community involvement. We know that you're a very active community. You know your neighbors. Points of social contact. This is a very, very important one. How many opportunities every day in this community do you have to bump into each other? Okay, that can be at the grill, for example. Walking trails, restaurants, playing golf. All of these are very important places because studies have been found that the more points of social contact that people have, the happier they are. And we all want to bump into our friends. We want to see them all the time. It makes life better. Another thing to consider is community aesthetics. What does this community look like right now? What are its positive things? What are its negative things? Building on your current assets, continued revitalization of a community, resist maintaining the status quo. That's a big one because you're an older community. It's been like this for 40 years. You think it can be like this for the next 40 years? I don't think so. We all need to embrace new concepts and new ideas. I'm going to talk a little bit about what creates a sense of place. I'm going to use Madison, Georgia as an example. I'm going to go through several examples and talk about why. Madison has an iconic building in it. It's got a courthouse. It's got a town green, which offers many places for people to socialize. UVA is a prime example of iconic architecture with its rotunda and its big green that all the buildings are around. Very, very strong. Back to Madison, we've got people eating outside in restaurants, wide sidewalks, a lot of trees, lots of points where people can socialize. Washington, D.C., the mall is very famous. We've got iconic monuments, landscaping, hardscaping. And then back to Madison, this is an aerial view. You can see the town green, and they've got a separate structure here for bands, a big walkable area. People can go there for festivals. They can also just go and have lunch there if they're working downtown. Very much a sense of place. Now what we've got in this part of the state are a lot of barns. It's very rural, like I said. It's got a lot of farmland. This is an example of just it's from another golf course playing off local architecture. It looks like a little farm, but it's a little utility building. It's not expensive, but it's beautiful through its materials, its form, being in the country, and its color. It's very, very simple. But this is probably a place where they store equipment for the golf course. Not an expensive building, but it fits into the landscape. All right, we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that is the world of possibilities. I'm going to turn it back over to Neil.
When you think about what it could be here.
I can hear you.
They can hear you, that's good, appreciate that. When you think about the possibilities, when we came to look at Chickasaw Point and how it appeared to us, one of the things we were struck by is that this is Highway 11 coming from Westminster, and as you can see, there are 2 or 3 signs like this as you approach the entrance to your turnoff here. But there's nothing that says that you've come to any special place. It's just another DOT road sign out there that tells you that there's a Chickasaw Point's there. When you're coming from 85, you've got this one that tells you there is a golf course, but it doesn't do anything special when you approach from the south. Here's some examples, and we're not, make sure you understand, we're not saying that anything that we show you is what we think you ought to do. What we're saying is you may want to go to a sign which you would have to lease property because it has to be done off of the right-of-way, but you could go back and maybe perhaps lease some property right here, or go on back to here, and maybe lease a piece of property here or over here, and actually build a bigger sign so that when you're riding down Highway 11 and it says Chickasaw Point, golf community, waterfront community, gated community, whatever you want to put on it, that's up to you, is that they say, wow, that looks nice, and it's landscaped around it. So it gives a sense of presence about what they could expect if they came in and wanted to look at your community. That's just a couple of examples of signs that are wayfinding out on Main Road. Here you're on South Union, approaching, going past the church. You can see the pine trees here. There's nothing spectacular except the chicken houses that are over here. But nothing else spectacular that you're looking at coming in. And we're saying that when you get from to South, when you get, whoa, what happened to that? That's the second approach, and now you're closer to the trees, and now you can start seeing something here. And we're saying what would happen if you went to an ornamental tree. Now, we're not saying that it's this tree, but that creates much more interest when you start looking at a different way to have an alley of trees, introducing something from a distance that says, there's something up there that's different. It's not a pine tree. It's something different. Wonder what it is. Wonder what we're going to experience. Another alley of trees. It gives a whole different sense to where you're coming, and you may be able to let the adjoining property owners across the road on South Union, they may be willing to allow you to plant trees on their side because it does a world of good for their property too. Now, this is what you get when you get close, when you get ready to turn in. Y'all know what that is? That's your current announcement of place. That's your second announcement of place as you go through the gate. So does it really matter how this looks when in context, you see that. You don't see just your entrance and sign. But you can become anesthetized to those things, and you don't see it anymore because you're so used to it, you quit paying attention to it. But a new person coming in immediately notices things and says, well, wonder why that's there. Wonder what that is. Why did they do that? And people are looking for reasons not to buy, not reasons to buy. They're looking for a reason to rule you out as one of their choices, not a reason to include you. It just happens to work that way. But this is your entrance, this is your sign, and you actually have to almost be turning in order to read the sign. Because it's so close to the road that you can't really see it till you're on it. And then, even though you've got a beautiful magnolia tree here, it's got the sign hidden and tucked away, so you don't have a sense that you've arrived anywhere when you get to it. And I'll bet you, people drive by it the first time and then they'll turn around and come back. Because they don't know that they're there the first time they come in. These are some other types of entrances that are going into golf communities. Not that we think you ought to do anything, but you can see that they're open, you can see where you are, know what it is, and I think that this is Christine's.
It's too bad we're not the same height. Next, we're going to talk about gatehouses, and this is a gatehouse that I was working on for another project, and it also is on a very, very busy street. We've incorporated landscaping, oops. And it's just a sense of approach, you know, that if you see an alley of trees, you kind of go, what is that? What is that place? That looks interesting. It kind of just creates interest. One thing we want to talk about too is, okay, how do we tuck a gatehouse into the landscape? I think this previous example is wonderful in its use of materials. We know we have native stone in South Carolina. It's a little stone wall with a tiny little roof and, you know, a little hint of a gate. There's their sign. It's very nice. It's very understated. It's very subtle. Very rural, which is nice. This is your approach, okay? Again, we've got this waterfall. I'm not sure the history of that, but it blocks the view of the gatehouse down there. So you're turning in, you don't see the gatehouse right away. The gatehouse is a little bit old and a little bit tired, but it's still interesting. The first time I came here, I thought, well, there's going to be a nice view when I finally get in here, and I was looking at the land to the left and to the right, and I thought, this is really pretty. All right, this is another gatehouse, again, using a lot of stone, and, you know, I think it's a slate roof or either a terracotta roof, I'm not sure, but we've got heavy timber headers, heavy timber columns, change of asphalt to a white brick to a brown brick. We've got a granite curb. It's just a lot of materials, and then I actually pass through the gate here. So there is this procession, okay? And then this is the other gatehouse that we were working on, trying to really use the architecture from the area with brackets and stone and a deep overhang, metal roofs. This is a gatehouse that has landed from Mars, okay? It has no grass. It will not have a foundation. This is just a bad example of, you know, a use of materials that are not interesting when they're placed together. It's not welcoming. It's just not real nice. All right. This is the view of the gatehouse as I enter and I look off to the right. Again, it's very pretty. There's the use of trees and boulders nicely set in the landscape. And I'm coming into the entrance here, and this is the beginning of the divided road. And this is the first intersection I come to. We are actually, you guys have been sitting for 45 minutes now, so we want to give you a break, about 10 minutes, and we'll start again. All right, next we're going to talk about just some simple things that will create kind of a commonality for you that are not expensive to do, but will kind of create a consistency within the community. And one thing we want you to think about are just signs, street signs, stop signs, decorative poles. These are not expensive items, but they create a consistent character within a community. Decorative light poles. We did have an axe pick last week in our heads with, we suggested that we create, or one idea is to create a common place for all mailboxes that people could drive to, and everybody hated that. They hated it. So we got that message. So, but another thought, and we did present this as well, is to have the same mailbox in front of every house. Okay, right now you probably have 25,000 different mailboxes here, but you know, you guys need, if you want to do this, just select a mailbox that everybody's going to use, and it's easy when people move in. It's one of the requirements is you got to buy a new mailbox, but that really will help. So Chickasaw Point, we have 1,300 acres. On Lake Hartwell, you're the only gated community. You have a sense of safety here, which is great. We're going to talk about new ideas and the world of possibilities. We touched on a sense of place a little bit. We're going to touch on it again here too. What gives a place its own identity? A new town center will do that. What's involved? An iconic building. How many do not know where this building is? Raise your hand. All right. Great. This is, I live about a block from this building. Everybody knows this building. It's big, it's white, it's Greek. It's an iconic building. It's very important, but it adds to and creates a sense of place for a very, very small town. A market can create a sense of place. It's also a point of socialization. A common architectural language, and by that I mean using the same material over and over. Everything in this town is white, okay? That's their common architectural language. In Chickasaw Point, you have several languages that really don't have anything in common. So that's one thing to work on as well. How do we incorporate these ideas into rural surroundings? One idea is to take a common architecture and create a village green. Possibilities are a new grill, a guest house for newcomers and visitors, a new pro shop, a new community center with a pool, tennis courts, pickleball courts, bocce, and a new POA office. This creates a sense of place. This is a smaller example, but if here is our iconic building, we have gardens. Just imagine if this were South Union up here, this building would catch your interest. And then when you came down the main entry road, you would see all these gardens and a pool and a little vegetable garden. Maybe this is the POA, maybe this is a guest house for new visitors. Again, it takes advantage of the rural landscape. This is another great example. If this is South Union, I've got my alley of trees, which creates interest when I ride by, like, gosh, what's there? And then I pull in, and I've got all these buildings that are common buildings that I go to every day to get a cup of coffee, visit Lisa in the POA, pay my bills, whatever. There might be a little market. If you tell Dollar General that you really could use a store close by, you can make it look like that. You can tell them that you are deciding on your architectural language. Remember the 2 gas stations. You have control over these things. Here's another smaller concept. Again, integrating iconic buildings. They don't have to be expensive at all. They just stand out. They're strong buildings into the landscape with gardens and a pool, an outbuilding, all very important. And here's an example of Southern architecture. It's playing off the old historic white buildings. We are in the South. I think this is a great example. All right, Chickasaw Point's opportunities for growth. One thing that really struck me when I first came in the gate, here's South Union, there's your old POA office. I looked to the left and looked to the right and I thought, wow, this is really pretty land. And then I saw these buildings, and then I saw the boat graveyard, and I thought, what is that doing here? Because it's so pretty, the land, and then suddenly I see something that really is storage, and it's just not very pretty. In our investigation of looking at county maps and just riding around the community, one thing we saw was, at first riding around, we saw that you have a little RV park here, and then when we went to the county map, you own all of that. That's 7 acres, okay? A very simple, inexpensive thing you can do right away to dress up your entrance is take at least this, drive those boats across the street and move to the woods, okay? And mow that grass, mow that grass. That's gonna look better right away. Now, these are built structures here. They're simple pole structures. Those poles might come right out of the ground easily, and you might be able to move those across the street too. This is valuable, valuable real estate right there. You got a lot of it. It's on South Union. It's pretty except for the boats. But it's, you know, it's the beginning of reinventing yourself right there. Very, very prime real estate. This is, okay, the same view without the 7 acres, but you see how green that is. Here's my entrance and the gate, the present gatehouse. But this is prime real estate for the new town center, new patio homes, multifamily. One of the things that came up with the last group that was really interesting is that people love it here so much that they want to stay here. They don't want to leave. And everybody wants to certainly stay in their home as long as they can. But you have a very good community. People really like each other. There was a lady that said she considers the people here not just her friends, but her family. Okay? So if you're living in a 3,000 square foot house and you are 82 years old and you can't climb the stairs anymore, but you don't want to leave your family here, what do? Okay? Or you can pack up and go, or you as a group decide, I want to create other types of housing so I can stay here longer. Now, I'm not talking about a nursing home, because that's, you know, that's kind of the last stop, right? But I'm talking about the opportunity to create smaller houses that are on one level, that are accessible if you're using crutches or a walker or a wheelchair. Those are things to think about. All right, smart land planning. Neil's going to talk a little bit about this. But these are the same 2 pieces of property. This is just a smaller scale, so keep that in mind. And Neil?
One thing I'm going to do is go back and give you a visual that Christine was talking about, and that's the fact that when she showed an intersection, the first intersection you come to right after you go through the guardhouse where your divided roads are, the concept there is that in order to get some unification with the variety of architecture and the variety of materials that have been used, is to create some consistency at the road. That's why we talked about the mailboxes and the signage. But what we're suggesting is that every intersection of the road off of the main boulevard, there'll be a decorative light pole and perhaps a shrub next to it. So that when you ride down, every time you see a shrub with a light pole, it means you're coming to an intersection. And then you see the consistency of the mailboxes, and all of a sudden you stop looking at every mailbox and every house being so different, and it starts giving you something that can make it be somewhat more cohesive. One of the things that We're working on a project right now in Clemson where we're building tiny homes, and they're 390 square feet.
Wow.
One bathroom, one bedroom. And we're doing it as student housing, but that's not where it stops. It goes further than that for people that are looking at downsizing and going into houses that are 1,100, 1,200 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, whatever it may be. All we're getting at is that when Christine talked about the reason we showed having a central mailbox, post office, is that when you build a town center, we don't know what'll go in it yet. We don't know whether you'll move this building into it, and we don't know whether you put the pro shop in it and change the whole configuration. We realize there are issues related to that. But there are all kinds of solutions that you can find if you make up your mind what you want to do. And a town center gives you a place for other businesses that are in the community to decide they want to go locate there. For example, you may have a dry cleaner that decides to go there. You may have a small store that wants to open there. You may have some other type of specialty shop that wants to be there. A great place, and that's where the post office comes in. Most of the communities that we have dealt with in other locations, the newer communities, meaning 10 years old or younger, they do put a post office in and don't allow any mailboxes. And the purpose for that is to force the people to come to one central point every day to create those points of socialization. Otherwise, it's real easy to move into a community and just live there. You don't play golf, you don't go participate in anything at the clubhouse. Now, a lot of us like to be hermits, and we choose to be that way. But it's amazing what happens when you have a community that puts in a town center, as an example, and you have to go to those places every day to do something. And maybe there's a small market there where you can get your, bread, mayonnaise, and cheese because it might snow tomorrow. But in any case, the key is intentional socialization. And what we're finding is that with the older population, and I'm saying older population is 55 plus, are looking at downsizing, getting rid of the big houses, and doing things differently. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how that works. One of the most interesting things here, these two pieces of property are the same piece. But by changing your zoning and how things work, this is the same number of lots for the same number of houses, but look at all the green space and open space that you have. People love green space. That's why they live on a golf course. I can't tell you how many people live on golf courses but don't play golf. They live on it because it's a beautiful place to look out and see. That was one of the things that Christine came across in your golf report, is that even if you were to do away with the golf course and turn it into a green belt, it would still cost you $150,000 a year just to maintain the green space, but it would have no source of revenue. So it didn't make sense to do away with the golf course and have to spend $150,000 with no way to raise money except through dues to keep it as a green space. But all we're getting at is green space sells. Green space is an attractive element for people that are wanting to look at coming here. How many of you think you live in a waterfront community? The only people who live in a waterfront community here are those that you live on the water. If you live internally, you've got one little spot that you can go to and be on the water. What you're living in is you're living in the woods. And what I'm trying to get you to do is to hear me, because you've got to think differently. If green sells, why not have green belts? You got a lot of land, you got land that can be built on, but it costs too much to do it, that you can turn into green space. You've got people that have let their houses go back to the county. What if you had 6 lots in one place and you cut all the trees down and put a green park there? Maybe it's a dog park, or maybe it's a walking park, or maybe it's a place that you can have cookouts with a small shelter, so that you take doing community things that are very inexpensive and you move them around so you got more points of contact of socialization spread out in different places, rather than just letting the lot sit there that you can't do anything with. It's going to require that you think of what you want to do with it and what you're willing to do to allow that to happen. So Christine, you want me to go ahead and talk through this, and you can jump in.
All right. What can we do with all these unbuilt lots and ravines? And remember earlier we talked about identifying your assets, okay? So I'm gonna challenge you to think about your ravines as an asset, and we'll get into that. One of the things that we did early on was we drove all over Chickasaw Point and identified what we thought were relatively flat, that's a stretch here, but buildable areas, okay? And we drove around until I got car sick and I had to stop and get out of the car for a while because it's very curvy and very hilly and hard to read a map. But we came up with several areas, okay? So that was kind of interesting to us. And they're really, Neil's right, unless you live on the water, you don't really experience a waterfront community. So what do you have a lot of? You have a lot of ravines. I'm going to jump ahead a minute here.
Let me point out one thing.
Yes.
Those circles that you see on here, it doesn't mean that everything within that circle is flat. In many cases, we find that there may be 3 lots that are flat, and if you combine those lots and change what you were going to build there, you could get 6, 8, or 10 houses in there. But right now, you can't get but 3 houses in there because the rest of them are not economically feasible to build on.
Yeah, and some of them are actually empty lots and leftover land. So, again, just trying to identify what the possibilities are. So, if we start talking about new housing ideas, it's interesting. There is a movement now to leave the bigger house and move into a smaller house, and also to kind of hide parking, make the pedestrian way the most important thing. In this example, what's interesting is we have, a normal size house and kind of a 1 lane with parking through here. And this is a piece of leftover land. But we have east house, east cottage, middle house, middle cottage, west, and west. And this couple here married late in life. She's a morning person, he's a night person. So he lives here, and she lives there. So it's an alternative way to live. Now, how great is that? For people who have been married a long time. It's a great idea. The other thing that's important to think about in terms of leftover land and other ideas about housing is that people like being around a green, even if it's a small green. These are examples, of course, that have actually been built all over the country, but they've got a common green, a sidewalk, a planting buffer, a low fence, a little bit more planting area. Then they have their front porch. They have a rail here, another layer of planter boxes, but you can come out here. It's your choice whether you want to be social that day or not and see Bob go by with his groceries. All parking is on the outer edge. So they have wagons, they can pull their groceries, but the way it's designed forces people to be social. It also creates a very strong sense of community. If Bob doesn't see Sally for 2 days, he's going to check on her, right? This is a plan showing several houses with tucked-in parking. They've got common green spaces, and they have sidewalks that go up to the house. Again, it's all about how we lay this out with a common green. And it's not a house on 1 acre, okay? These are all very small lots, but it's a community of people that live there. This is a good example of aging in place. Smaller houses, common green, a lot of socialization. Common materials, common architecture. You can see the layers of green and planting beds. People are setting up tables, eating outside. South Carolina has a great climate. I don't tell many people that because my husband's from New Jersey and we don't want a whole lot of people moving down, right? So, and I married one. Oh well. But it does have a great climate. You can be outside spring and fall. Summer's a little rough, winter's questionable, but all in all, we can be outside a good portion of the year. This is another example of, again, small houses that are close together. We've got a common parking lot. Everybody walks in. You've got a common green. Front porches. Here it is in reality. That green is not real big, but it's very nice. People are happy when they can be in nature. All right, this example I love. This has been built. I'm going to show you the drawing first. We've got a common green. These are 2- and 3-story houses, still not a big footprint, but they've got sidewalks. This is the Commons building. Okay, it's red, which I love. It stands out. This is a little platform. Guess what this looks out onto? No, it's a ravine. We walk out there and we look at nature. We're making, something that is not an asset. So they have this, and then they can go further into nature. This little building has a warming kitchen, table and chair storage, and a bathroom. This is the actual building. These are timbers that they cut down off their property. Okay, it's a very simple, inexpensive structure. There is the pathway to the ravine, and there it is. That's a great thing. You guys are rich in ravines. This is an opportunity, it really is. And again, think about it's such an old community, you've got to reinvent yourself, and you can reinvent it through nature and the woods and the ravines and being outside. It's a great thing. Another example, you can see here's one green lawn, and the pathway leads up to another green lawn. People are outside, a common architecture. You guys have a lot of places, remember the red circles on the map. You have a lot of places that present opportunities. Now this is a house I love. They call it the Betty Lou house. Betty Lou lived in a big house, 2,800 square feet. Her daughter said, you gotta move out of there. She was getting older. She didn't want to go. So she built a 1-bedroom cottage, 700 square feet, and it allowed her to stay here longer. This is her living room, okay? She's outside, she's gardening, she's in nature. People see her. And if they don't see her for a day, they're going to check on her. But this is all about community. It's a wonderful example. There was another second house called the Betty Lulu that was a larger version of this with 2 bedrooms. These things can happen. These are great. Again, common architecture. It's simple, but it's surrounded common green with a lot of plantings. Very, very pretty. Distinctiveness. I think Neil is up. Yes.
How many of you at some point in your life lived where you could just sit on your front porch and talk to the person next to the door on his front porch? Was it terrible?
They like it when our kids grew up.
Was it terrible?
It's great.
Great.
Community, you keep hearing us talk about community. Community can only occur when people have the opportunities to be put together. And when you look at the things that you saw on here a minute ago about all these different types of communities, you have your privacy. You can still have a 2,000 or 3,000 square foot house. It's just that it won't be more than about 25 feet wide, or 20 feet wide, and it'll be 15 feet from the other house. But just think about how you maintain green space. Just remember how you can maintain a lower cost in your utilities. You don't have to have a ton of driveways, a ton of roads to access it. It has all kinds of things. But it does not really affect the value of your homes, because your home is a different home. It's a single-family detached home. These homes will still run $140,000 to $180,000 a piece, depending on what type you do. But you've got so much land for it. And then we talk about the putting everything to the front as one of the considerations for that. But that's another great place to put patio homes, 0 lot line, or the tinier homes, not using the tiny home vernacular, but using these houses centered around the green. And you can also say that we would like to look at the opportunity to have an assisted living facility put here at some point in time. A lot of communities have done that, and I have owned one at one point in time. It's pretty difficult to get people to put them at places like this because you're more rural, you're not tied into other places. But there'll be a point in time where whatever you decide you want to do with this community, you're going to need partners. And when I say partners, you may want to go out and look at someone that may want to come in and build and explore that about building an assisted living facility here. You may want to go out and explore with certain types of developers whether they are interested in coming in and developing one of these concepts or one of these pocket parks, if you would, that we talk about locating somewhere in the community. But before they can do that, you've got to make decisions and say that that's a priority so that the board will know how you want to react to that. So what makes the community distinctive? The common architectural language, such as the light poles, the sidewalks, and the landscaping, the green spaces and the streets, and amenities with open space and a view from the property, pool, playground, and that connects the pedestrians. Once again, having some type of light pole is common. Green space, an amenity, this happens to be the pool, but you have an open view of the land and pasture, which you have very nice view looking back down toward the golf course from the front up there. This happens to be a green with a band shell and restrooms. This is in a lifelong learning center. This is at Patrick Square in Clemson. How many of you have seen Patrick Square in Clemson? You can cuss a cat and you know to catch the benefit of it. Once again, this is a traditional neighborhood design, and a traditional neighborhood design, they're called T&Ds. A traditional neighborhood design is typically where your house is built close to the street. Typically your steps come down onto the sidewalk, and you do all of your parking in the rear, and all you do is walk in the front of the street, so you have very much of a streetscape. And this is where you do sit on the front porch, and people do talk to each other. I can't tell you the importance of socialization and coming together. When we started out earlier, I talked a lot about how difficult it'll be because you got Mr. Sugar and Mr. Vinegar, and you're trying to get them to come up and make something nice out of it. The closer you live together, the more you see each other, and the more you're forced to talk to each other, the easier it is to get to a resolution that'll get you where you want to be. So it's not a foreign thought process to be looking at these types of things. And in this case, this particular country walk in Clemson, they put a walkway all the way around their whole community so that you'd have a paved walkway for exercise. You've got plenty of opportunities to do that here. One of the things I want you to remember, and I'm going to read this, someone turns 65 every 10 seconds and will be for the next 20 years. 75% of the households in the United States do not have school-aged children at home, and many are single-person households. People can work anywhere and now choosing the place they want to live first, and then finding a job. They pick a place for its natural beauty and raise their family there. And that's what we want you to think about. You've got a 40-year-old development that's got tons of land that hadn't been built on. That's bad in one way, but it's great in another way. You do have, at 40 years of age, you've got assets that can allow you to reinvent yourself. It's going to have to require that you be brave. It's going to require that you make decisions and that you do some risk taking. But in order for us to get this kicked off, we want you to tell us what's important. Those of you that are sitting at tables, I'm sure you're wondering what the paper's for and what the pen's for. I'm going to ask you to break up in groups of about 8 to 10 people, and we're going to give you a list of items up here, and we want you to go through, and we're going to give you 20 minutes to do it. And we want y'all to come to a consensus about what you think is important. Now, I'm going to ask that if you're husband and wife, I'd like to suggest that you don't sit at the table together, because I'm sure one of you has never been heard by before, and you'd like to be heard tonight.
I'm going.
If it wasn't that way, we wouldn't be normal, would we? But what we want you to do in this workshop, these are not listed in any order, but they're just listing signage at Highway 11, consolidation of all amenities to create a town center, which has a pool, tennis, pickleball, community building, grill and pro shop, pocket neighborhoods, broadband, street lights at intersections, mailboxes versus post office, relocate boat storage, staying in your community, small patio homes, assisted living or personal care services, and any other important item. And what we want you to do is to sit and talk with each other and appoint one person at your table to be a scribe, because when you're through, we're then gonna have you come up and tell us what your decisions were. And we want you to tell us, for example, you said broadband, absolutely, #1 priority in my life. Another example may be consolidation of all amenities, and you may say, well, I think we'll leave the grill and pro shop where it is, but I think a new community building up front may be good. Whatever your thoughts are that you come to a consensus on as a group, that's what we want to hear from you. So everybody break up into groups, get busy. If you got questions, hold your yellow card up, we'll come by.